Okay, there's been a lot of gaming news today, and there's a lot more than I can actually talk about, but I have decided to focus on one particular subject for today's video, which, if you read the title, you already know what I'm talking about here. But we have the Xbox Disc Digital finally unveiled. So, what is that, you might be wondering? So, basically, just to summarize, this is a program that allows you to convert your Xbox One and Series X games into digital licenses. So you pop the game in, it will detect your console and tie the game to your account. So at this point, you no longer have to put the disc in to play the game. It will download it just like a normal digital game. So it'll have that same functionality in that regard. So that actually removes one of the major pain points for physical games on a console versus digital games, of course. You know what I'm talking about. You have a good sized collection of physical games and you want to play a different game. That means you have to pop the disc out, pop the cartridge out, put the other game that you want to play into the console. And that's how you have to do it. This is going to allow you the flexibility of a digital game where you don't have to constantly swap discs or cartridges. You'll be able to just play it right there from your account. Now, what is the caveat to this course? That is something you have to consider as well. So essentially, this digital license will automatically expire on your console if it's inserted into a different console. So that would happen, of course, if you decide to trade or sell the game, or if you let a friend borrow it, or something of that nature. Also, I guess a circumstance that you wouldn't want to happen, like if somebody stole the game from you and put it in their console, I guess that would be another way that that could happen as well. But as long as none of those things occur, you will be able to continue to play the game. And so that'd be really great. You can go ahead and put your games up. You don't have to worry about getting them scratched up or anything like that. And, it's actually a pretty cool idea. But it is a bit of a Trojan horse. It is a Trojan horse, guys, at the same time. While Microsoft doing this particular move is certainly a lot better than what we've seen Sony do. And it's also technically better than we see Nintendo do with the game key cards, because you still have to download the game and all this good stuff, and the game is not even functional anymore if the server shut down. Whereas the license would be tied to your account, so you would be able to, I guess, perceivably have it perpetually. I guess that would probably depend on compatibility and all that good stuff as well. It does mean that Microsoft, which, as I talked about in the previous video, which some of you might not have watched, but I think it's a very important one, Microsoft is not going to be a savior for physical games. So it is a good move. And by the way, it doesn't work on original Xbox or 360 discs. They don't support this. But the thing is, Microsoft has been planning this for quite a long time. A very long time, which we'll get to in a little bit. But before we do that, I did want to talk about, Asha Sharma's statements about physical games for the upcoming console, the Project Helix. It's not going to be called Project Helix. It'll be called Xbox, and then they'll think of some stupid name that will utterly confuse people as to whether it's actually the new console or not, because that's what Microsoft does every time. Go figure. Well, I guess the 360, I guess wasn't confusing. Like, people realized, oh yeah, it's Xbox, and then it has a number after it. So obviously it is not the previous one that was just called Xbox. But then they threw that all out the window with Xbox One. And you know the story. You know the story. But of course, she was saying that, she understands that people really appreciate having physical games and everything like that. But the thing is, they're focusing on affordability and efficiency. What adds to the cost of a video game console? Does a disk drive or a cartridge slot add to the cost of a system? Is it cheaper to manufacture a system without it than with it? Obviously, yes, it does have a cost. So when they're saying affordability and efficiency, which efficiency can mean a lot of different things, one thing it can mean is there's only one way to play the game, as in no physical games, because they're not going to have physical games for this next Xbox console or PC or whatever it is. That's why they are doing this program. This program is a way for Microsoft to keep their customer base on board for the next generation of hardware by giving those physical Xbox gamers a way to migrate their library digitally. That's why they are doing this. That's exactly why they're doing this. As a matter of fact, you remember this old fuckface right here? Yes, I'm going to call this guy that. Good old Don Mattrick. This is the guy that brought Xbox to where it is today. As you can see here, there is a picture of a Kinect. This was the beginning of the demise of Xbox right here, the original 360 Kinect. Although this is the Xbox One Kinect in picture here, because this is an interview from E3 of 2013 that Don Mattrick had with Jeff Keighley. And we're going to go ahead and play it out.
It's a great line for games. Yeah, and absolutely. I think people are going to love it, and then they're going to understand what we're trying to create and how it links games and functionality of the box, some of the advantages that you get.
What an absolute nerd.
A box that is designed to use an online state.
I'm allowed to say this since I'm a nerd.
To me, is a future-proof choice. I think people could have arguably gone the other way if we didn't do it, and fortunately, we have a product for people who aren't able to get some form of connectivity. It's called Xbox 360.
Right. Stick with 360. That's your message. You know,
Stick with 360. Hell yeah, baby.
Zero access internet. That is an offline device. I mean, seriously, when I and thought about who
absolutely lovely,
the most impacted, there was a said, "Hey, I'm on a nuclear sub."
Right.
And I don't even know what it means to be on a nuclear sub, but I've got to imagine that it's not easy to get an internet connection.
No shit, dumbass. That guy is the reason that Xbox is where it's at today, where everything seems to be on fire. And we have Asha Sharma trying to pick up the pieces as best as she can. I think she's actually done a pretty good job so far. Not perfect. There's been a couple of missteps, but compared to what Don Mattrick did, compared to what Phil Spencer did, I think she's made a lot of good choices. And I think between that and Sony's epic blunders, they might not be as bad off as you'd expect for the next generation. So, what did I mean, by the way, about that this was Xbox's plan all along? Well, 13 years ago, people, at that E3 2013, that's when Microsoft discussed their plans for this new Xbox One console. And after announcing those plans, they decided to reverse them pretty quickly. Why would they do that? Well, there was a number of reasons why they would do that. As you mentioned, with that interview with Jeff Keighley, Don Mattrick was talking about the online connectivity being necessary and everything like that, and then that the Xbox 360 would be the way to go if that wasn't possible for somebody. Now, when we're talking about online connectivity, we're not talking about just, going in the game, downloading your updates, playing your online multiplayer games and that kind of stuff. It was a lot more heavy-handed than that. It was, you needed online connection at least once a day to use the console. It was a 24-hour check-in. So if you didn't check in within 24 hours to the internet, you couldn't use the console. You had to sign in before you could use the console. So the console had an online DRM. it required you to authenticate with the Microsoft servers before you can use it. They also had restrictions on used games for resale or trade or selling them or anything like that. Absolutely nuts. I'm not sure if this article kind of goes into details on that. But apparently what they were trying to do at this time, because when you went to like a GameStop or a mom and pop shop or whatever, and you trade your game in, they give you your credit or cash or whatever for the game. Guess who doesn't get any money from that transaction? Microsoft, Sony, Nintendo, as well as any publishers that are involved with that game. So no payment is given to EA or Ubisoft or Square Enix or Capcom or anybody like that. It's just a transaction solely between the customer and the retail store, or the customer and the reseller, or whatever the case might be. They had plans to change that to where you would have to pay a license fee in order to transfer that physical copy of that game that you bought to another person so that they could use it. That was something that they were actually planning on doing. So that Microsoft and those publishers would still continue to get money for those used games, even though that transaction has already been happened. It happened long time ago. It happened days, weeks, months, years ago. They would still get a transaction fee. That was something they were actually planning on doing. Now, they did have a method of being able to trade digital games, which is something that technically was lost. They did have the ability for you to transfer a license of a digital game to somebody else. I think it was still subject to that platform fee, if I remember right. But, I guess if there was a digital game that you hated and you didn't want anymore, you could sell it to somebody and they would pay that platform fee or whatever to get it. And I guess you can recoup some of your money. So I guess that was a little bit of a loss for, I guess, the select people that might have actually been kind of like enticing to. But otherwise, this was absolutely a disastrous idea. But this was the prototype. This was the prototype for what Microsoft is doing in the very near future with those Xbox insiders being able to test that functionality. Now, it is a cool idea. I will admit, like I said, better than what Sony or Nintendo has done in terms of being able to preserve your game in a digital means. It's kind of cool that you could do that. But, it just means that, going forward, it's going to be all digital. This is just a stopgap to get the physical gamers on board. Because think about this here. If you're somebody that is a hardcore PlayStation collector, you have a bunch of PS5 and PS4 games, and you've seen what Sony has done, and it's absolutely disgusting in your opinion, and you hate it, of course, and then there's a PlayStation 6 that comes out. Let's say Sony is like, you know what? Even though the PS6 isn't going to play disc games, we'll still put a disc drive in, or you'll have the option to get a disc drive to play your PS4 and PS5 games on it. If that's really the only way that somebody that is a disc collector would have any incentive at all to adopt that console. If Sony decides to go disc zero, like zero discs at all, like not even for backwards compatibility for your PlayStation 4 and 5 games, that gives them zero incentive to buy a PS6 unless they decide, fuck it, I'm gonna just digital game, I guess, for the new games. That's possible. That is possible. There are probably some people that are going to do that because they'll get the fear of missing out, seeing all these new games or whatever that they must play, or they have to have the absolute best hardware to play it on so they get the best graphics and frame rate and all that good stuff. There are going to be some select people that are like that out there, but I think a lot of people will have no real incentive to adopt that system. at least with this, Microsoft is giving them an incentive to adopt the next generation of hardware. But it is a Trojan horse. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please be sure to check out the video right above my head. That's the most recent one that I did. I think you'll appreciate it. And if not, be sure to check out the one in the corner there. That's something the algorithm recommended. I think it's fire, of course. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing. But that's going to be the last line.